what's the opportunity and where is the gap? I think the same exact thing for EV. The opportunity is there's a lack of education and a lack of awareness and a lack of confidence in EVs. And I think it's, typical, of course, for a dealer to want to lean more on the OEM to make that impact with the audience at large. But there is such an opportunity for dealers to fill that gap and start speaking on, some of the instances that might be holding people back from considering an EV. So thinking about like range anxiety, the cost versus the lifetime cost of owning an EV, even just different features. They might even be a little overwhelmed stepping foot into a dealership going for a test drive in an EV because they really don't have any idea how it works. So adding those resources to your website, and again, just videos with your phone. I think sometimes we want to like overthink it or over professionalize something before distributing that content. And really that like true, honest content coming directly from a salesperson about their experience versus like that tier one type of messaging, that's going to hit home a lot faster when someone sees a real person, using an EV or using a particular feature. So I know that there's a lot of dealers with some lingering models on the lot, just because, we had some overconfidence in EV vehicles in 2023. But I would take those exact models and really start leveraging those for your content.
Thank you. I did not know that what I was experiencing recently when I was in the market to buy a car was range anxiety, because I really did want to get an EV, but the concept of me driving up to the Stream HQ for 3 hours and 3 hours back in the same day was not going to happen with an EV without some serious coordination. So I can see how other people would be hesitant.
Yeah, and that's a local concern if you think about it. Is the infrastructure in this particular area established enough where there's charging stations?
Yeah.
That's not a big brand EV question. That's really, what does this particular backyard look like to make sure I don't run into this issue.
And there are certain markets that are just way ahead with this, and they're seeing a lot of adoption. And if you go to California, it's hard to not run into an EV. But along the East Coast, those stations just don't exist. I did the research.
Right.
They just don't.
Yeah.
All right. So
I was just going to say, like, you brought up regions, like really understanding the region too. Like if you're in California versus Boston, that is a completely different type of EV messaging that you're going to have. And that, again, you should not rely on the brand to have that conversation, because again, it's going to be different types of hurdles that you need to get that Boston customer to overcome that the brand or, California's influence probably will never speak to. So just something to consider.
No, that's a great conclusion to that. Aaron, I did want to get you to chime in here before we start wrapping up. But, there are certain markets that not just the manufacturer, but demand and competition is also asking for better adoption, stronger adoption. So what can retailers do to increase that interest and get that adoption for their particular rooftop?
Yeah, so just like Sarah said, the general consumer is looking to the dealership for all things EV. So the dealership is really going to be like the education center of this. We really need to have dealers specifically talk about like the battery range. So this is the biggest hurdle. So we need to make sure that, yes, when we're thinking about like different regions or markets, what's the seasonal or like weather considerations when we're talking about battery capacity? We also need to make sure that the dealerships are educating the consumer on like the at-home charging solutions, and then while charging on the road. And then make sure that our dealers are also thinking about that extra guidance after the purchase of the EV. So what does vehicle maintenance look like? We're thinking about like earning customers for life. So how are we helping them with that full transition after the sale into service and beyond?
Now, had you been running things at any of the dealerships near me and addressed those specific concerns? I may be an EV driver right now, but I am not. Um, so, so Sarah and Drew, from the media perspective, is there anything that we need to touch on real quick before we conclude the EV discussion on how dealers can find and market those particular shoppers? Any media insights that you want to share?
I think that an EV shopper is different than a traditional shopper in a lot of ways. We already talked about the length to purchase, but given so much of the uncertainty around range or price or whatever the considerations may be, people are going to do more research and more diligent research before buying an EV. So being there even more from a retargeting standpoint, but also ensuring that you're providing answers to all of those kind of high level questions about range. And I know I already mentioned lifestyle in regards to social, but those lifestyle topics like Aaron just talked about, like how are you making a customer feel comfortable that they can live the life they want to live with an EV? So kind of providing content and advertising messaging that talks to that. And they're going to, do all of that research and engage with that content and really be kind of a research hub for them if you want them to buy an EV from your dealership.
Thank you. We are at time, and I could talk to the three of you for 2 more days about so much of this. So as we wrap up, I want to ask, how can business leaders and advertisers solve for, as they're layering this information and they're seeing some of these challenges that they're facing right now, how can they plan for 2024? What are the main things that they need to be thinking about? Aaron, we'll start with you, then Sarah, then Drew.
Yeah, I'd say my top 3 based on this conversation, it's going to be just being prepared for meeting the new shopper demands. So showcasing monthly payments, just helping shoppers envision their monthly payment and that monthly budget, educating shoppers on EV. We just need to be prepared for this wave. And then don't forget to build customer trust within the service department. So just making sure that we are taking care of everybody from start to finish.
All right. Sarah, what are the ways business leaders and advertisers can solve some of the challenges they're facing and plan for 2024?
Yeah, I think something like 2 words that I keep in mind for 2024: audience and environment. So how are you taking that audience first strategy? Like, get your budget out of the view and really think about who your audience is, and then layer in those channels. So it should never be a channel first strategy, always a audience first strategy. And then consider the environment and what's happening this year that can influence those channels. Even if cable TV is your top channel to get in front of your audience, is that impacted by the environment and what we're expecting within the political season coming up? And does that change your decision? So just make sure that you're thinking about those 2 things first, not just where you've always spent.
All right, Drew, you haven't really made us laugh really hard, so no pressure.
I know.
What is your
Yeah,
what is your top way that we can pay attention to 2024? What do we need to know?
Absolutely. Now there's pressure for me to make you laugh. I don't have anything, but in terms of preparing for 2024, I think being flexible. I already mentioned throughout, with search generative experience and other things with Google, that this time next year in 2024, it could look completely different. There could be new products, and we're just scratching the surface of automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning. And those things are going to grow and adapt and change and learn faster than we could ever anticipate. So don't stick your feet in the mud. Be willing to adapt and change your strategies as new information and new processes and new products are released, because consumers are going to adapt and change in the way that they interact with your dealership and purchase cars or service cars, whatever it might be. They're going to adapt. So you have to adapt with them and ensure that, your dealership is where they want to purchase from in the way that they want to purchase. So embrace kind of those new ideas and those new technologies, and change when you need to change, basically.
Appreciate it. And then also, if we have to talk about GA4 next year, we'll be very disappointed. So please.
That too, yeah.
Done. All right. Well, I'm gonna turn over to you guys for final thoughts as we recap this entire experience of looking back over what we've learned and what retailers need to pay attention to specifically for the automotive industry. What is the most important takeaway you want viewers to walk away with? Sarah, we'll start with you, then Drew, then Aaron.
Most important takeaway is balanced budget. So like Drew had said, he mentioned a retention strategy a couple times. And we have seen this a lot where there's such a heavy investment in awareness, a heavy investment in performance, and we're driving all this traffic to the site, and it's like filling up a bucket with holes in it. We want to make sure that we have some sort of retention strategy to stay in front of that, because especially now, again, your 2024 marketing dollars are precious. Let's make sure that every visitor we're driving to the site, we're retaining their attention as much as possible. Also, I have a recommendation. I feel like the next webinar should be GA4 and jokes with Drew. So
I'll put it on the agenda.
Yeah, that'll be a happy hour webinar.
Drew's Google Corner.
Yeah. Exactly.
Go ahead.
My takeaway I can tie right to Sarah, actually. I can build on that a little bit. I think the marketing funnel and sales funnel, in a lot of ways is somewhat antiquated because people don't shop in a linear fashion anymore. We're exposed to advertising and marketing and messaging and just social media at all times. So that shopper journey is so unique to each individual person. So ensuring, from an audience first standpoint, like, are you showing up in front of your audience at the right time, in the right way, with a compelling message consistently? Because there's a lot of noise out there in terms of advertising, that they might not, be receptive the first time they see a message. But that doesn't mean the advertising's bad or the creative's bad. It's just a consistent effort to kind of stay in front of people, so when they are ready to make that purchase decision, you're who they think of.
Perfect. Aaron.
Yeah, I'm going to round it out.
Takeaway.
Yeah, so thinking about all these potential changes to the media plan and the budget, one thing I just want to stress is staying consistent with a recent change for like 90 days. So we have dealerships that love to turn a product on and it didn't work for a month and they'll turn it off. It takes time to build some of this campaign performance and audience. So I would just say, let it sit for 90 days so we can fully see how everything is performing. And if we need to pivot, we can, but at least we'll have that 90-day window to really see how things, like how we just gave it a shot. So just want to make sure we give ourselves a nice window there.